Alright guys, in this video we're going to be doing some European mounts. They're going to turn out to be like this. This is a couple of them that I did a few years ago. These are both my deer. I think I killed that one 5 years ago, and I think I killed this one the year after that. You can see how well they turn out. When you're looking at a European mount, depending on how it's been done, if you really want to scrutinize one of these things, the trouble areas that you're looking at are the color on the bases and the burls and the color across the forehead. That's really going to determine the quality of a European mount. Your standard European mount, the old school way to do it would have been to cut across the base of the skull right there, the brain cavity, which would remove then a bunch of this ear. The ear area removes the brain, the bottom of the brain box, and makes it easier to scoop all that stuff out. Makes it easier to get all that stuff out. I like doing them like this. It's a little bit harder to do. It's more tedious, but I like the look of more or less an intact skull. Now that being said, these are not going to be completely intact because there's these nodules for the ears that if you really want to get a good clean skull that's not going to stink, you have to bust out these nodules on the ears. Also, you got to do some damage to the inside of the sinus cavity, up inside the nose. It's not going to be biologically correct, but from the outside and from all angles, nobody's ever going to know the difference. But you got to get that stuff out, otherwise it will stink. I don't use beetles. I'm going to walk you guys through the easiest, quickest way that yields the best results that I have found. I've been doing this stuff for, oh gosh, 10 or 15 years at least. I'm going to walk you through what I have found over the years to be the easiest and best way to do it. You probably hear this burner hissing in the background. This is a canner. This works real well for the cook. It doesn't work ideal for the whitening, but we're going to do two sort of simmers. We don't boil anything, but we're going to simmer it. We're going to cook the meat off. It'll take about an hour to cook off all the meat, and then we're going to switch out. We'll use the same pot. Again, this is not the ideal pot. The ideal pot would be about 3 inches shorter than this one, but it works. It works enough for me. I've hunted for the ideal pot and I just can't find it. I built one years ago. It's rusted out on me. I just never built another one. So these canners work good enough. They hold 5 gallons, and they work good enough for the biggest whitetail skull that you'll ever run across. So, but we're gonna simmer it after we get done cooking the meat off. We'll then switch out. We'll dump the water and stuff out, and we will switch over to peroxide. So what we're gonna need to do this. And again, a few years ago, I did a 2-part video that went way into depth, way into all the details. Check out my old videos if you really want to see all the details, but I'm going to try to keep this abbreviated because I know nobody really wants to watch a long video, but I'm telling you, go back and watch them old videos if you're serious about this, because you'll screw them up a lot of ways if you don't. So for this abbreviated version, we went to Sally Beauty Supply, and we bought 20 volume clear developer. I'm not going to go into all the details why. We're going to need 4 gallons. We also have Mop and Glow, which is regular old Mop and Glow. That's in the house. That's pretty much, those are the consumables for this. We also need super washing soda. This stuff, you can pick it up at Walmart. This is not baking soda. This is called super washing soda. You got to put this in the water. I'm going to go ahead and I'm waiting for that water to warm up. I'm going to get it up to a simmer. While I'm waiting on this water to warm up, when I fired that up, I went ahead and got out my rain gear. I got my raincoat. I got my rain bibs. I got my black rubber boots. And you can see out there, I've got my low PSI pressure washer. I have a big industrial you know, big gas, I don't know, 3,200 PSI or whatever, but I don't want to use that big gas and pressure washer. This is what you want to use for these deer skulls because they're fragile. The sinus bones are fragile. So this is just a little cheapy. You can pick these up at Home Depot and Lowe's. They used to be under $100. I'd say they're probably a little bit over that now, but just a low pressure, probably 1,700 PSI. I wouldn't do anything over 2,000 PSI. That's all you need. I got it hooked up to the garden hose. I got it plugged in. It's a little electric deal. We're working on concrete. We're not going to do it on gravel because gravel makes a mess. You blow dirt and rocks and everything up. So if you only got gravel, lay down an old sheet of plywood or a piece of plastic or something because you're going to be working out there on that. So got that all set up, ready to go. I've got a bucket of water here. I always keep a bucket of water real close handy in case something stupid happens, especially with that peroxide. That peroxide will eat you up, man. I mean, it will burn you bad. So I always keep water here. Dilution is the solution. So if you get something real nasty on you, splash a bunch of water on you. That's sort of a safety thing. But we're going to go through a bunch of that water just during processing. We'll need it to replace in the pot. So you're going to need a bucket of water. Turkey fryer, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and these two heads have already been skinned. You don't want to leave your heads skinned for very long. Once they're skinned, you really need to get them cooked off. If I were to leave these here for a couple days, the fat, I don't know what happens, but once they get skinned, they start drying out and that fat sort of absorbs into the skull and you have a real hard time of getting the skull gleaming white then. So once you get the skin off, you need to get them cooked off. So these were skinned late yesterday. I'm going to go ahead and get these up on the bench. I'll show you what they look like. The tools we're going to need on the bench is, I guess I got to get that stuff out anyhow. So these long handled forceps, those things are my favorite tool to use for this. I got these super long pliers. I just got those recently. I don't think I'm going to need them for this stuff. But we're going to need these forceps. You need a knife to cut the meat off with. I've got a pack of scalpels that I prefer just because they're super sharp. And you can pick up a box of number 22 blades and a scalpel handle real cheap. And they'll last you forever. One scalpel blade does about a deer head. So these forceps, we're going to need a super long screwdriver. Long handled, little small tip. It's been ground down. It's a flathead screwdriver, but it's probably, I don't know, 14, 16 inches long. You need one longer than standard, and probably a pair of needle nose. And that should be about it. Scalpel, stuff to dig the snot and stuff out of the head. We're going to make a mess on the bench here. I'll get a bucket to put all the meat and stuff in, but I'm going to go ahead and get one of them heads up here. I'll set you guys up on a tripod, show you what it looks like. We're going to clean all the meat off of that head and get it cooking. I think these are, I think this is a number 4 handle. I think that's the number on these handles. It's been a few years since I bought it. You buy 1 or 2 handles, they'll last you forever. And again, these are number 22 blades. They're a small blade, they're real common. They're the cheapest ones you can get a hold of. You don't need a real long blade to do this. This one's already been skinned. Skinning is pretty basic until you get to the burls. I'll show you on that other one. We're gonna try to get 3 of them done today. Right here, we're just trying to take meat off just to make it quicker when we get into the boil. So we don't need the bottom jaw, so we're going to try to remove the bottom jaw. Cut a little bit, pry a little bit, cut a little bit, pry a little bit. You can cut up against the bottom jaw. Again, we're not keeping the bottom jaw, but don't cut up against the top of the skull. that one. Super duper careful here when you're messing with these broken scalpel blades even. Don't try to pull that out barehanded. Use the pliers. Make sure you don't lose it in there. And then don't just throw that in the garbage can. Put it in a bottle of some kind or a container of some kind. Even mark it sharps and then throw it away. For me, I just keep a little Gatorade bottle. It's marked sharps. That way somebody doesn't get cut. And I put broken nails and screws and all kind of stuff out here in the shop. Put it in that bottle. When that bottle gets full, then you throw it in the garbage can. About 2 cups of this powder is what you want. Okay, so I'm gonna reach over here and I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm gonna turn that heat up just a little bit. I want to get this up to a simmer. I'm just gonna use the head to stir it around. Make sure we get all that stuff dissolved. Okay, now this is, I purposely didn't fill the pot up as much as I thought I would. And the reason is, you want to try to keep these antlers up out of that water as much as possible. You got to get the skull under the water to get it clean, but this stuff, this water, even just water will take the color off of those antlers. So don't dunk your antlers in, you know, way up on the antlers. You're causing yourself heartache later on. We're going to have to fix that. So I knew I'd be a little bit low, which I am. And again, we're going back to this water. I'm going to use a little bit of that water, pour in there, and top it up right to the base of the antlers. And again, that's another reason I turn the heat up, because this cold water is going to take a little bit to warm back up. Alright, now we got to rock and roll. Again, just use the skull to stir the stuff around. Good and dissolved. Now we're probably looking at about, there's probably 4 gallons of water in there now. So you can see there's a little bit of water up on these bases. There's really nothing you can do about it. But we want to just cover the meat that we got to clean. Okay, so this is going to get up to a simmer, and I'm going to watch it closely. I only want it simmering. Maybe a bubble here and there. You know, I do not want a rolling boil. It's pointless. Now I got it rocking and rolling right now. Lots of fire because I want to get the heat into that cold water. But here in just a minute, when that starts to simmer, I'm going to turn that way down and just maintain a simmer for 30 minutes. Set a timer on your phone, 30 minutes. And my timer just went off. So you can see we got just a bubble coming up here and there. I mean, we're just barely simmering. So this thing's been in for 30 minutes, and you can see how much work that super washing soda has done in that water. It makes such a difference. So now I'm going to put my rain gear on. We're going to go outside and we're going to start pressure washing. All right, so I don't know how well you can see. I don't know how smeared up the camera got. Yeah, a little bit. Let me go clean off the camera and we'll look at what we're working with. All right, well, I got in here and I started inspecting this thing and it just needed more time to cook. So I put it back in the boil for 10 more minutes, took it back outside and pressure washed it. And now what you see is what we're at. Alright, so I cooked it for 10 more minutes, took it out the pressure wash. You can see there's still just a little bit of dark material way down in there. I'm going to go ahead and use my screwdriver and break that up as much as I can again. And we're going to have to call it good sometime. So now what I've done is dumped the peroxide. I dumped out the pot. I just dumped it out in the gravel. There's not much to that water stuff. So dumped it out in the gravel on a spot where I can kill some grass. And cleaned out my pot, wiped it out with a rag a little bit. I mean, I didn't scrub it with soap and water or nothing, but I wiped it down real good. Put the peroxide in there. I put 3.5 gallons in for now, and we'll see how that does. And again, this is 20 volume clear peroxide. We're going to drop this one in. Hopefully it ain't up over the bases. We just want it, actually we almost don't want it to cover the skull, because this peroxide is going to cause those bases to bleach out. Everything that the peroxide touches, it bleaches out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here with this paintbrush, or chip brush. Alexa, set an alarm for 12 minutes.
12-minute alarm set for 6:31 p.m.
And for the next 12 minutes, I'm just going to brush peroxide up on here. I'm trying to keep them bases out as much as possible. I think I might need a little bit more in here though. Put a little bit more in, and actually I'm just going to use water. It'll dilute it down a little bit, but not that much. It's going to bleach out the part of the antler that's underwater or under the peroxide. It's going to bleach those snow white. We're going to have to recolor that. I don't want to have to recolor any more than I absolutely have to. And because that's sort of boiling and, you know, doing its thing, and I might splash a little bit up on there, I'm also going to keep a bottle or a spray bottle of water, and every now and again I'm just going to spray down those antlers to try to keep them, you know, dilute down any peroxide that may accidentally have gotten up on there. So I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to set you guys off to the side and focus on this. Alright, that's pretty good. Well, that's what it looks like after pressure washing it off. It is gleaming white. That discoloration I was talking about was up in here. Looks like it came out pretty good. That's why I added a little bit more water to sort of get that level up. It caused me to whiten out my bases a little more than I wanted to have to, but I really wanted to get that white. So we'll recolor this in a couple of days. I'm going to leave it sit at least at least overnight, leave it set to dry real good. I'll probably put a fan on it. I'm gonna go ahead and do those other two, and I'll catch you guys up tomorrow. I'll show you what the next step in the process is. Well, they've been sitting here on the workbench drying with a fan blowing on them for 2 days, so they should be good and dry. Let's go ahead and get them downstairs in the house where the temperature's a little bit more stable, and we'll go to seal the skulls and then recolor the bases. All right, we're down in the basement now where we've got a steady temperature. Because it's winter outside, it gets cold in the shop, and we want the mop and glow and paint to cure up properly. So that's why we're in the basement. So this is regular old mop and glow. I'm going to put some of that in that little baby food container. I'm going to use that cheap paintbrush, and we're going to coat all the skull. We're going to try to get up inside the nose. We'll pick up the head and we'll turn it upside down. We're going to try to coat all the bone, but keep it off the antlers. You don't want to get any of that mop and glow on these antlers at all. Well, it's the next day. That mop and glow is dried up. It put a nice sort of satin sheen on that bone. It looks really good. I don't see any weird drips or anything like that. The teeth, when I first picked it up just a second ago, the teeth were kind of stuck to the carpet just a little bit. When I picked it up, I could tell it stuck just a little bit, but you know, no big deal. Everything looks great. It smells good. So now the next step in the process is to recolor the burl or base, whatever you want to call it. And to do that, I'm going to get a little bit of mineral spirits. I'm going to pour it in this cup because we're going to use that to thin out our paint and also clean our brush. And paints that we're going to be using. This is a kit that I picked up off of Amazon, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I only used just a handful of colors out of it. The siennas and the umbers, and that's pretty much it. I've seen some other videos where guys use like an ochre color. I think that's just too yellow. Around here we don't have, our deer just don't have that in their antlers at all. So pretty much this raw sienna, burnt sienna, raw umber, and burnt umber, between those 4 colors, and sort of mix it up. I'm going to use these styrofoam plates as a palette. I'm going to use these little bitty art brushes. You can pick them up at Walmart or whatever. Use probably the very smallest ones. I'm going to go ahead and start on it, and I'll show you guys what it looks like as we're working on it. Alright, well there we go. Once it, once it dries, it'll take some of that glossiness off of it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Well, it's been 2 days since we put the color on those bases, and I let them sit down here in front of the fan being on low for the last 2 days, just to make sure the paint dried up, looks good. I've been rolling this thing around in my hand and nothing changed. I just want to make sure, you know, nothing funny happened with the paint or anything. So essentially we're done. The skull itself is done. I think it turned out phenomenally well. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. But in order to hang it on the wall, I use a real simple piece of wire to hang mine on screws, and I'll show you how I do that right now. You want it to stick out just proud of these, just a little bit proud of these bones. You figure if it's sitting up against the wall like that, you need it to stick out just a little bit to catch on the screw. Let's go hang it on the wall. I'll show you what it looks like. Well, that's what it looks like hanging on the wall. I think it turned out really good. So if you guys are doing something like this, I hope I helped you with this video. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you like this video, click that thumbs up button. And until the next time, keep on tinkering.